Welcome back to Bag End, your girlfriend's favorite vacation destination and purveyor of fine videos. Today we're taking a deep dive into episode 2 of House of the Dragon titled The Rogue Prince. Between a standoff at Dragonstone and our minds being forced to consider the viability of a 12-year-old child as a potential wife, there's plenty to discuss here. I'll try to keep it spoiler-free and just give my analysis on what's being shown as to not spoil any plot for my loyal fans. But if you do enjoy going into things completely blind, perhaps this video is not for you. If you've made it here, I do hope you'll enjoy and make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our content. So,
Come on, come in!
Get comfy by the fire. Let's just start the breakdown. What do you say? First things first, they dropped a new intro, and I actually loved it. They used the Game of Thrones song, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." I found myself looking just like Gingy here. It definitely worked. Now you might be wondering, Momo, what am I even looking at though? So, while Game of Thrones took us around the map of Westeros and Essos, what you're looking at here is the bloodline of the Targaryens, literally. As you can see the flow of blood, it's going from one person to the next. And actually starts with the Doom of Valyria, which you can see pictured here, and goes down the line until you could actually see Rhaenyra's, who's represented by these 3 circles, which is actually the same symbol that you see on the necklace that Daemon gives her in episode 1. So to start this episode, we can see that they're setting up the Crab Feeder as one of the central antagonists of the show. He seems like a sadistic freak in dire need of a good Dracarys, and I'm hoping at some point we do get that. Corlys Velaryon enters a small council meeting and urges the king to take action in the Step Zones, as the Crab Feeder's presence here will impact the flow of goods along their trade routes. For context, the Stepstones are a grouping of islands in the south that reside between Essos and Westeros, notably the southern kingdom of Dorne. Naturally, King Viserys comes off as weak and unready to be a strong king using a show of force in this matter, and as usual he defers to the judgment of his hand, Otto Hightower. More on him in a bit. At the end of the episode, when Lord Corlys goes over the king's head to Daemon on this issue, it's definitely going to have ramifications moving forward. The part of this scene that stands out was Rhaenyra speaking up. She's just been made heir to the throne, she feels she is smart, capable, strong, so she decides to make her voice heard, suggesting to the small council that they send some dragon riders to the Step Zones, strike fear into this incursion before it gets out of hand. She's immediately disregarded and sent away to choose a knight of the King's Guard. I believe the quote was, "Perhaps the princess's talents are better suited somewhere else." Shut up, Otto. Is it just me, or am I getting some serious Littlefinger vibes from him? Seems to always be scheming, pimping his daughter out to the king, getting his way, and shifting King Viserys' sentiment towards his own. He's a sketchy dude. I'm eager to see him get confronted. One cool Easter egg from this scene, in the opening shot we hear,
Sir Ryan was a strong Lord Commander of the King's Guard, but he was ill for some time.
Sir Ryan was actually brought up in Game of Thrones Season 1 between Jon Snow and Robb Stark when they were just playing around. Robb says he is a Targaryen king, and Jon says that would make him Sir Ryan. Pretty cool. So with the death of Sir Ryan, it requires someone to replace him. And after this, Rhaenyra chooses a new knight of the King's Guard. All of them are simply names from well-respected houses of the realms, and since this has been a time of peace in Westeros, none had seen real combat, except for Criston Cole, who she eventually selects. Another cool little detail for you guys, this same room where the knights all line up, this is the same exact room that Cersei turned into her little map room. This is why you guys come here. Cool Easter eggs, callbacks, give the video a like. Come on, why don't you? How you doing? So as I mentioned in my preview for the show, which you should totally watch, it's a common theme for this show that the seeds of war are often planted during times of peace. From the Great Council of Harrenhal, when King Jaehaerys chooses Viserys out of a potential of 14 choices, it left a lot of people feeling angry and jealous that they weren't chosen, or that their offsprings weren't chosen, or their family wasn't chosen. Like I said, seeds of war. We're slowly watching everything fall into place that may eventually start a gigantic civil war for the throne. Now, the issue with Viserys' leadership in general is that he's too much of a pushover, and it's allowing other powerful people to gain power for themselves or their families or their offspring. Whether this comes in the form of Daemon, his brother, taking hold of Dragonstone, defying the king's orders, or the crab feeder imposing his will down in the step zones, or even Otto Hightower pimping his daughter low-key to the king and trying to secure his family a potential future on the Iron Throne. Now, of course, we do find out at the end of the episode that Viserys actually chooses Alicent Hightower as his next wife. And this is going to have implications regarding Rhaenyra and her relationship, as Rhaenyra, of course, was just chosen as heir, and now her childhood friend, really, has become her stepmother.
I am your mother, and I know you.
A weird relationship, to be sure, but what's interesting is this quest for power that they're both going to be fighting over, because Rhaenyra, of course, is excited to be queen. She's hoping to be the first queen of Westeros. And now Alicent, being her new stepmother with Viserys, they're ultimately going to have children. So when they do have children, it should create some awkward situations between the two. I don't see this relationship being as strong as it once was, especially in this episode, as we can see Alicent and her bonding over a nice prayer down in the crypts and talking about loss and getting Rhaenyra to pray, and it was a very touching moment, but I fear that this may be one of the last moments that we do see these two as close friends. Viserys choosing Alicent Hightower as his next wife was not that surprising to the viewer, because we've seen these two bond ever since the death of Viserys' wife Aemma in the first episode. One person who was very surprised by this choice is Corlys Velaryon. Earlier in the episode, we see Rhaenys and Corlys approach King Viserys and offer their daughter as his next wife. Now, it's a little creepy. Sure, she's 12 years old, but from their standpoint, let me break this down for you. Rhaenys Targaryen was, quote, the queen who never was. She was not chosen during the Great Council of Harrenhal, so she was left a little bit salty, as were a lot of people in the Velaryon household and others around the realm. She was considered to be a better choice than Viserys, but she wasn't a man, so she was not chosen. Now, this bonding and marriage between these two families honestly helps to right that wrong. Viserys really should have never been made king over Rhaenys. She was the better ruler, she had a better mind for it, and she was just a smarter person, more adept at being the leader of the realm. Them marrying Viserys to her daughter is kind of righting that wrong. And so, yes, it's weird, but from a standpoint of appeasing someone who was previously slighted and making them happy and setting up a good, long-standing relationship between two very powerful houses was a very good idea, and he was counseled this by a variety of different people. Everyone, of course, except Otto, who has his own plans. So 2 more scenes I want to talk about before I wrap things up with my thoughts. The first is the conversation between Rhaenys and Rhaenyra. Rhaenys essentially speaks from experience and breaks the cold truth to Rhaenyra here that men will sooner see the realm burn than let a woman ascend the throne. Rhaenyra, proud as she is, seems to disregard this, but I feel like Rhaenys could be a great mentor for her moving forward, and I think we'll see that play out in future episodes. And finally, we should talk about what I thought was the best scene of the episode, and that's the standoff at Dragonstone. Once it's found out that Daemon has taken the dragon egg meant for Viserys' now dead son, he becomes enraged and ready to take action. So King Viserys debates going there to confront Daemon himself, but chickens out after Otto advises against it. No surprise there. So Otto goes instead with some soldiers, and upon arriving, there's some insults thrown between the two. Otto calls Miss Arya a whore and says their child would insult their family's name, and we know how Game of Thrones world feels about bastards.
You really are a fat bastard!
As things start to get tense, Otto and his soldiers come to realize that stepping to a Targaryen dragon rider means, well, this dude's got a dragon. Lo and behold, Caraxes flies in looking badass, and in one shot, we can even see the holes in his mouth where fire comes out. Daemon is not going to bend, especially not to Otto, who he hates with every fiber of his being. He draws a sword, and the tension reaches its peak, and we get a shot of Rhaenyra flying in through the clouds on her dragon Syrax. This was such a great scene, and it makes Rhaenyra even more of a crowd favorite. She seemingly knows how to rule and is mature beyond her age. She diffuses the situation, retrieves the egg from Damon to put in safekeeping. We find out later that the whole thing was a ruse, as Massaria wasn't pregnant anyway, and this was just Damon trying to strong-arm his brother. I think Damon is really shaping up to be that type of badass character, great warrior, who's kind of crazy, but makes you want to root for him at times. Sort of like a Stannis Baratheon type. Overall, my thoughts on this episode are that it was actually really great considering it was setting up some major plot points for the season. I loved the standoff at Dragonstone and the scene of Rhaenyra flying in through the clouds. I love how it feels like quintessential Game of Thrones in seeing powerful houses turn on one another like what Corlys did at the end. And I loved the scene in the crypt with Rhaenyra and Alicent. It was a good introduction to the importance of prayer and religion on the psyche of someone with so much going on. Ness and I agree, this is about 75% of a full milk bone. She's gonna devour it, of course, because that's what we do. We watch quality stuff, and we... And it's not gonna stop. Keep watching the videos, they'll get better, the channel will grow, but the jokes will still be awful. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. Sound off in the comments what your favorite scene was, and until next time, my friends, Baggins out.